Hello and good evening, everybody. This is John with WoW Support. Back again. We got a fantastic show today. We're going to talk about ESP32 and some of the new hacks that are out there. We're going to talk about some personal accomplishments we've had in life. And we're going to see where the conversation takes us. We'd love to have you along for the ride. If you like what you're seeing, put a comment below. Give us a like. And please subscribe. Never thought I'd ask that in the beginning of the show, but hey, I just did. Like I say, I'm John, founder of WoW Support, running this podcast tonight. With me, I've got Mike.
Hey, everybody. How's it going?
We got Jackson.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
And then the man who's truly running the show, Artie, sitting behind the computer.
Yeah.
He's a Wizard of Oz.
Something like that.
He has the power of the microphone. He can make us go away real quick, put us on mute. It could be fun to do that again. But, yeah, so ESP32. What is that thing, Jackson?
Yeah, ESP32 is actually a really incredible microcontroller that has kind of taken over the market. A lot of people are familiar with Arduino. That's a lot of the market share as far as beginners microcontrollers goes. A lot of DIY projects use Arduino. ESP32 is a little step above it, right? Now it wouldn't be suitable for a lot of projects just because he is a little bit more power hungry, but you do get a lot more performance out of an ESP32 than you would say an Arduino Nano or even an Uno at that point. But what makes the 32 super popular is its capabilities with Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. It's integrated in the chip, and a lot of times if you purchase a little dev board, it comes with the antenna and everything, so it's ready to go. Yeah, it's a very popular and inexpensive microcontroller that is really changed the personal project realm. It's really easy to kind of get your own smart devices around your home now.
Yeah, I bought a package of like 5 of them for $30.
Yeah, they're super fun. I've got a couple here, but they're kind of packed away, so I'll have to pull them out another time. But yeah, Go ahead.
So when you're talking about these things, one of the applications I've seen is home automation, like make lights turn on and off, or put sensors in different places to have lights follow the sensors, that kind of thing. What else can you do with them?
Oh, I've seen. I haven't played too much with them, but I've seen lots of people make smart clocks. I've seen somebody make a little Nixie tube clock out of it that you could update and control with your Wi-Fi. It would contact a server and make sure it's getting the right time.
Nice.
And you can do anything as far as wirelessly controlled robots. That's a super simple solution to turn a robot that would otherwise have to either be automated in code that you can now drive it with a controller or even access it through your computer.
I think I've got a new project to do with my son. Build some battle bots using ESP32s.
Oh, that'd be a lot of fun.
Autonomous battle bots where they seek each other out.
Yeah, I'm sure it's been done. I'm actually not sure what the I haven't done a lot with battle bots, but I'm around a lot of people that do. And I don't know if they commonly use ESP32s or if they're using a different kind of a controller. I'd be interested to know about that, actually.
I want a little more impact strength than an ESP32.
I mean, it depends on how you package it, right?
My son and I, we've been watching BattleBots lately, and we saw one where the attacking robot came in underneath, and the weapon spun and hit the guy and flipped him up 6 feet in the air, landed on the edge of the arena behind one of the smashing hammers.
Oh, man.
It kicked him out of the ring.
It's incredible, the creative engineering that these guys go through when they're designing these battle bots. And it's all sorts of fun.
Yeah, but the ESP32 is something I've been dabbling with here at my house, trying to get the different visual effects with lights. One of the first projects I did was a Christmas tree, getting lights to dance in different ways.
Yeah,
That was fun.
yeah, it's definitely something I want to do once I've got a nice house, got some extra money to throw around. I'll if you guys ever drive by, my house will be the one that's got the 5 million LEDs on it. uh, but
The Christmas vacation house.
oh right, yeah, exactly. Um, but yeah, ESPs32s. There's been a lot of talk, a lot of controversy about what was said to be a new vulnerability regarding its Bluetooth communication. Um, and I won't profess to be an expert on exactly how the hack is done, but essentially it has to do with its HCI communication, and there are some hidden functions which the news is calling a backdoor. There were hidden functions that were originally created as debugging tools to essentially give you further access into some of the registers and some of the basic functionality of the ESP32. And researchers at I gotta remind myself of their name. Uh, Logic Security. Researchers there had found these hidden functions, found that they can be used to kind of access some registers that you probably don't want to be accessed through some hidden functions like that, and made that announcement. And the news, of course, picked it up and started calling it, oh, ESP32s all have this massive backdoor into the system that is, a massive vulnerability. So yeah, what I've got here, I've got actually an article from Bleeping Computer and an update from them on March. Let's see here. I believe it was March 10th. Was that Expressive, who is the manufacturer of ESP32s, had said that they hadn't publicly documented these commands and that they were originally meant for debugging use, but that in coming updates they would be removing them. However, it's pretty much it's an overstatement to say that it's a backdoor, because it's something that every single chip or microcontroller has are hidden functions that give extra access.
A random thought on that. I saw somebody get a fleet of 486 computers to test for hidden instruction sets in the x86 instruction. And he found some. He found some really cool ones.
Hidden or undocumented, like
Yeah.
side effect. Are they side effect instructions?
No, they were programmed in for future
really?
use, but active. The script that I saw, he developed it using his knowledge on this effectively a 486 farm. The script that I saw gave him ring 0 access.
Hmm.
Mike, you know what that is?
Mm-hmm.
Jackson, do you know what ring 0 is?
Mm-mm.
So in computer security, the processor is ring 0.
Sure.
Like your system, your kernel, that's ring 0. Ring 1 is the command interpreter just outside that. Ring 2, and just the further out you are, web browsers are ring 5.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe ring 4. I mean, it just depends on the architecture. But ring 0 means you have absolute control of the instructions.
Right.
So he was able to do that.
Yeah, that's impressive. And those are the kind of vulnerabilities, depending on how you can actually get to that point, that will cause a big ruckus among the IT community, right?
Yep.
So it seems like to me, from what I've read and what I've been reading, is that there's a big controversy over whether or not this is something that we should really be super worried about. Some people are saying that it doesn't really matter, because in order to actually access this, you have to be within Bluetooth range, which is like on some of these controllers, like 10 feet, So assuming you can be within 10 feet and you have extended access to that location, sure, maybe you can access some of these functions and get into the firmware. So that aspect of it does lock that down to a very tight physical space and physical security. It's almost like you should maybe worry more about your building security, whether or not the lock on your lockbox is that great. So two different things. Of course, both are important. Whereas some other people, now I can't say this is completely true or verified, but the idea is that assuming someone does get into that, it would then give them lateral access to the network, which can be true, right? Now, of course, I don't think there's been any definite evidence that is the case, and here's how you get into the lateral network. But the idea of you being able to get in and then start editing some firmware for a device like an ESP32, it is a pretty good indication that there could be some lateral access.
So just as a kind of just to talk about that in a more practical sense, not to say that ESPs are unpractical, but you've seen Hue light bulbs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Did you know those things were found to be vulnerable early on?
Yeah, I believe it.
Do you know what Phillips said?
Who?
It's just a light
Phillips.
bulb.
It's just a light bulb.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
Just a light bulb. What's the big deal? It's gonna be on or off or a color. Like, what does it matter? So you hit the nail on the head with lateral movement. If I can hack your light bulb, and that light bulb can reach out to command and control on the web, I own a foothold in your network behind your firewall. And then I can start scanning the network for vulnerabilities. If there's not one found, I still own your light bulb. And from there,
Man.
I can just keep that foot in the door and constantly scan for new vulnerabilities whenever I want.
And there was that, what is it,
I
fish
might get
tank
a second light
thermometer
bulb.
a few years ago that was found to have been used as a backdoor instead of, potentially used. It was, how one of the big hacks happened a few years back.
Casino in Vegas. I know exactly which one you're talking about there, Artie.
Now,
The owner wanted to measure the temperature and see it on his phone of his beautiful fish tank.
yeah.
And they had to hook it up to the system, and it was behind the firewall.
Now, some of the things I've seen and heard is that the idea is that in order to access these commands, you already essentially have to have elevated privileges anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's also where some of the what does it matter come from, because if the person already has elevated privileges from some other means, then you've already got a problem anyway, not because of this, right? And so I guess the thing is anybody done definitive research to say, like, from the public facing side of it through the wireless connectivity or whatever it is there an exploit that then grants you access on that higher privilege? Or is this just kind of it's like, we got elevated privileges because, well, we own and manage the device, and then we discovered these commands that weren't documented, but you have to have elevated privileges to even do, you know what I'm saying? It's like,
Right.
Well, I think
And
it's. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think Mike, you exactly summed up what I was trying to get at, is that what the whole debate was whether or not this is actually an issue. And many people are saying that, well, if you take a second to think about it, any other Bluetooth device from TI or whoever else manufactures these chips, they're all gonna have the same vulnerability. It's the same thing. You can get into the HCI and eventually communicate with the chip. And so I think you're right in that, if you already have elevated privileges, you're hacking at a branch rather than getting down to the root of the problem, which is, well, how did they get elevated privileges in the first place? And I think that root cause is lacking from this issue. We're starting, in the middle where we already had elevated privileges, and now we have access to things we shouldn't normally have access to if we didn't have elevated privileges. So it's kind of just a loop that doesn't get us anywhere.
Well, it does. It does, because it means we should never be complacent with our security. Don't use simple passwords. Don't use blank passwords, even on your hobby project, because it could be a foothold.
Mm-hmm.
Hackers are always going to look for the low-hanging fruit. Compromised passwords, easy passwords, 1234 is my password, or no password at all. They're going to look for that low-hanging fruit and
Doesn't
then
matter.
exploit whatever they can. But if they've got, like I say, if they've got keys to the kingdom,
Yeah.
These few debug commands are the least of your problems. I mean, they've got the whole thing, the whole enchilada. So there's a whole world of things that they could do with if they've got that level of access anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So Mike, what you're saying is, if they've got access to use these backdoor tools, they've already got access to use all the power tools and the official I can do anything tools.
That's kind of what I've heard, and the way I've seen it is that it's like I live in an apartment building. I manage it. I put a lock on the door to keep outsiders who don't live in the apartment building out. But that doesn't say anything about my security for the people who do live inside the apartment building, right? So anybody that lives inside my apartment building has a degree of access to the building, right? So to say that my neighbor has a back door into my apartment, but well, yeah, he lives there. I mean, he's down the hall, but he lives there, And it's just kind of like and so that's where I think that people see that it was undocumented. Did somebody grab onto the fact that something was undocumented and think, oh, that's a vulnerability because it was undocumented? And so now we're going to hype this up because we're making an equation that's not necessarily true,
Well, let's hope there's no master key or backdoor
Right.
access that could be attacked.
And
I'm
that
sure
is
researchers
true.
have tried
And that is
playing with
true
it.
because there are instances where there are undocumented things that provide alternate access other than through the front door
Mm-hmm.
of a
Yep.
device or something. And so
Like a
I
master
think that
reset
is fair, but
something.
it's not an always undocumented is not always a vulnerability.
Right. And I think
I gotta
Espresso,
agree.
I think Espresso did a good job of at least at addressing this, because there is all of this kind of scare news about, oh no, the ESP32 isn't safe anymore. Go use a different microcontroller. But I do like that they kind of came out and said, all right, well, and the next software updates will remove the functions. I mean, it is something good to have that at least, we're getting rid of access points. It's an access point that's guarded behind a different door, but at least, so they do get that far, at least that option is no longer an option.
Yep.
And so I think there's a good lesson to be learned there, that it's just because, it doesn't quite make sense as being the biggest issue right now, it still could be seen as an issue. So might as well get rid of it while you can.
Well, and it goes back to we talked about it in other weeks where we found exploits that because somebody left in development, they put some code in to test or debug or do something, or just some temporary things like what was one? There was one where they hard coded the credentials into the code and they accidentally left that in, right?
Right.
And
do not use, do not ship.
Yeah, do not ship, exactly right. And it was, it's the due diligence that somebody has to do to make sure, like, okay, we finally tested everything checks out, but now we have to package this up for production use and to put it out in the wild and to make sure it's hardened and secure and everything. What do we have to take out? What do we have to remove? Or what do we, and really the solution was to maybe they should have coded that differently in the first place so that by default it ships without it, kind of thing. But it's things like that where people just forget to do something and it accidentally leaves backdoor into the system. And I can kind of see that maybe that's a thing here too, where it's like, well, yeah, we put those in for debugging purposes. It's useful for development for people who are developing and need to look at that information. But when you put in production system, all the disclaimers I see is like, if you put this into production, you should set the following settings, or you should uninstall the following thing, or whatever it is, a process you should do to harden your system.
Mhm.
I wish Windows had that.
It's something that you can easily, you know, as a developer, you can just open source that and say, hey, if you want debugging, here's the code. You know, paste it here, and you're good to
But
go.
don't use it for production.
Yeah, don't
I
use
mean,
it
you
for production.
and always you can, but you can't come crying to us later when, you know, your system gets hacked and data is compromised.
Yeah, and it's what you were talking about. I think is super relatable to me, at least. You know, I do a significant amount of programming and coding myself, and I can't tell you how many times I've left debugging tools in my code because I was too lazy to mull over, you know, 1,000 lines and find, you know, all the little print lines or even different function calls that I won't want or necessarily need in the live or production version, and it just gets left there. And I can't tell you how many times I spent, you know, 30 minutes debugging to debug my debugs. And it takes, you know, it's a time suck. So it's something that happens. It's very common.
See, is that debug it? Debug it?
Debug.
Yeah,
Yeah.
debug it. Yeah.
But it's certainly something that's it's difficult because I mean everyone just hates debugging anyway. So you add on top of it, and now you got to make sure you got to be very careful, and it takes, I think, multiple sets of eyes going over every aspect of that code to make sure that, you know, those little shortcuts you put in your code are no longer there.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
I'm not sure exactly what the best way to do it is. Obviously, I still have my own little adventures, but I think what
I
John
think it's
was
just
saying is,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think what John was saying about, you know, having that completely separated is the best way to do it. It's not easy, it's not fun, and it's not the quickest, but it is the best.
Yeah, you got to act like you're paranoid. You got to act like you're breached. You know, there's an adage that a friend of ours, he says, assume breach on everything. Assume you're already compromised. Assume somebody's got that access in, and then build your security around that idea, and you got a better chance of even thwarting it before it starts. So, you know, it's a great security practice to say, okay, somebody's probably in the network. I just don't know about it. Let's make sure that this thing is robust, that we've got a moat, a drawbridge, castle walls, guards on the towers, you know, all that stuff. So I think when you're developing something, don't put it on your home network. Don't put your Hue light bulbs on your home network. Put it on its own separate network.
And lock it down as much as you can.
You know, I've been actually relieved to see the industry in the last 2 or 3 years grab onto the idea of having an IoT separate network. So it's not on your home computers. People can't get to your TVs. People can't get to your printers. Your sensitive data is sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
Because who
And
cares if the fridge can't get to your printer?
Yeah, and I would love to see a little bit more education coming out from maybe even the manufacturers about how that works, because I mean the average person doesn't understand. Like, I have two networks, like they know the most they might know is that they have one that's supposedly 5 gigahertz and a 2.4 because the router says there is. And so I think the more we can educate the community, the public, about why it's important to separate and what things should go where, I think you can do a lot of good with that.
And what the proper definition of separation is.
Right.
Yeah. I try and use CB radios as the example. Now, unfortunately, those things have gone the way of 1970s movies. But a CB radio, have you ever seen one, Jackson?
Uh-uh.
A CB radio or a 1970s movie?
Either.
Oh, I've seen plenty of 70s movies.
Yeah,
How about Smokey and the Bandit?
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
No, I haven't seen that.
Oh, that's worth it. That's worth it. Made the Trans Am famous. Everybody wanted to have that car.
And the Bandit. Yeah, no, never seen that.
So CB radios, there's citizen broadcast radios. You have an antenna hanging off the back of your car. You have a little box. You have 40 channels, 40 channels that you can pick up and talk to people on the road. You have a limited range depending on the size of your antenna. That's why some people have bigger antennas than others. Size matters. That's right. I went there. If you're on channel 1 and I'm talking to you, Jackson, and Mike wants to talk to somebody else, they got to be either on another channel or they got to wait their turn.
Right.
Wi-Fi is the same way. When one device is talking, if your computer's talking to your printer, it's sucking up that whole channel for that communication. And everybody else has to wait their turn, even though you've got a separate side ID, separate password, separate security, all that stuff. It's on the same channel. It'd be as if we're talking Portuguese and Mike is trying to talk English and somebody else is talking a Mandarin. All of us can be on the same channel. We can't understand each other, so it's secure, but we can't talk at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you can't have too many Wi-Fi devices in the same area without it really slowing down your speed.
I'll tell you what, I'm living in an apartment situation right now, and at my last apartment, I was really packed in with a lot of people. And, if you were to pull up your phone and look, try to connect to a network, you get 50 networks, easy. And I made the mistake of assuming I could get, a little wireless headset and have it work nicely. And that was a nightmare. It would work fine for a minute, and then it couldn't do it because it wasn't using Bluetooth. It was using a USB adapter, and then it was using radio frequency. And it's the same frequency that everyone's Wi-Fi was on. And so
2.4 gigahertz.
Yep.
Probably,
and so it
yeah.
was just, didn't work. Doesn't work.
It works when you're right next to it.
Not even then. I had the thing, like a foot away.
Oh, that's bad.
There was too much crosstalk. I mean, it was just.
I know,
yeah.
Jackson, what you should do is get like a little copper wire and put one end on the antenna and the other thing on the device. Oh, wait. I guess that's a wired device then, huh?
Yeah, so if you can't tell, I've converted.
You've upgraded?
I have upgraded, honestly. I don't think I'll do any more wireless peripherals for a while.
Not in apartment situations.
No.
I mean, that is a very saturated environment.
Yeah.
I think it's bad enough just in my neighborhood, though, in my residential neighborhood with houses that have, 3/4 acre lots, anywhere from a half to 3/4 acre lots. And they're still like everybody's Wi-Fi comes up.
That's what you think when you.
I mean, fortunately, the signal strength for most of them is 1 bar, so it's not too much interference. But
well, you know what killed that? You know what kills that more than anything? Those $300 routers that people crank up to full power so they can watch streaming Netflix in the bedroom
or the backyard.
Or the backyard.
There's a setting. Jackson, you may have run into this, but here's an education moment for everybody. There's a bandwidth where it says 20, 40, 80, 160, or 320 megahertz.
Mm-hmm.
Don't crank that up if you want good speed. It's counterintuitive.
Really?
Don't set it to 80 megahertz thinking you're going to get 80 megabits per second.
Isn't it the bandwidth, the overlap?
It's the how wide are the channels.
Yeah.
So never mind the CB analogy. Let's go roads. How many lanes of the road is your semi going to take?
Yeah.
5 is 1 lane. 10 is 2 lanes. 20 is 4 lanes. So on and so forth. So when you get up to the 160, I've got a neighbor here that has his cranked up to 320. He's sitting on all 14 channels in Wi-Fi. Okay, so he gets great speed if nobody else is talking. if one other device is talking in that spectrum, which any of us will, it interferes with his entire signal and doesn't steer around it.
So
Just-
what is the original object of having that option? Is that for are you guaranteed a more clear signal if you're taking up more of that bandwidth?
It's not a guarantee. It gives you more bandwidth. You do get more speed, but you're also susceptible to more people interfering and talking at the same time.
Gotcha.
That's
So-
why on the Wi-Fi scanners that you can get on your phone app and everything, the really good ones will show it's not just a line to say, okay, you're on this channel. It's going to be like a little parabola that says, okay, at the peak, this is the channel you're on, but it falls off to either side to say, hey, you're also kind of into this channel or that channel. And those tools are very helpful. That what you can do with that is look at what's going on in your environment, and you see everybody's all crammed up here, maybe on the upper range, like maybe channels 9 through 14 or something. Well, then set your Wi-Fi devices to start using the lower ones where there's not so much population, where there's some open air and everything like that. Try to avoid overlap as much as you can too.
General rule, 40 megahertz width on 2.4 gigahertz on channel 1, channel 6, or channel 11.
Mm-hmm.
If you go channel 2, 3, or 4, you're just evil and you don't know it. Because you're interfering with everybody else. But 1, 6, and 11 will keep you out of the lanes of other traffic and give you the best chance of getting that 40 megahertz bandwidth. So, hey, take that for what you want. Education moment.
It's like full circle, we're back to, when you're setting up your 20 billion ESP32s you have in your house. There you go.
Yeah.
They will suck up your bandwidth.
Yeah.
And
Wired
only
all
need to
the
hack
way.
one to own all of them. What's that?
Wired all the way.
I'm with you. At the same time, I do like my little nifty wireless devices.
Mm-hmm.
Just make sure you have it on the most recent password levels. I forget the terminology for it.
I don't know. Not sure.
John? The
Party.
the security level
encryption
for
level.
password for Wi-Fi.
Oh,
Oh.
Web3.
Web 3.
Yes.
You're
Yeah,
not on
Web
Web
2
3.
is way too easy to compromise now.
Yeah, if you're not on Web 3,
I shouldn't say it's
you're
easy.
compromised.
The methods are complicated, and you can't do it with your standard desktop hardware, but yeah, you're not safe. Web3.
War driving exists. For those that don't know what war
So-
driving is, it's kind of become a game at DEF CON and other conventions where hackers get together. They basically will drive around and find Wi-Fi networks to hack.
It's been a minute since I followed some of the going-ons at DEF CON, but there was one to see how far you could go to get an unamplified Wi-Fi signal. You can use a big antenna, but you can't boost the wireless adapter. It has to be stock.
Mhm.
So there's a couple teams, and I think this was about 10 years ago. They got big, brown, massive satellite dish antennas, parabolic dishes. And the competition starts in the morning, and you have a certain number of hours to do it. So they drove opposite sides from Las Vegas to get on top of mountains, 119 miles.
Holy
Wow.
cow.
And they were able to establish communication with off-the-shelf Wi-Fi.
Wow.
That's
With
crazy.
parabolic dishes.
Yep.
Well, a focused beam of light is still a focused beam of light, no matter how far away it is.
When U.S. passports were first issued with RFID tags, they were saying you got to be in close proximity. You know, you can't read these unless you're within like 2 or 3 feet of it. You're safe. It's not that big a deal. That year it rolled out at DEF CON. Guess how far away they got it to read?
A couple miles.
65 feet.
Oh, wow.
So
That's not bad.
at DEF CON, right? You know, a Wi-Fi heavy environment, and they could read an RFID tag from 65 feet away.
65 feet's far enough away that you're not going to realize somebody's standing that close to you to be able to do that.
Yep. Yeah, these guys are probably the best of the best with some of the best equipment that money can buy. So, odds are. But doesn't mean you can't put off-the-shelf stuff into a backpack and stand near somebody.
Although,
gotta-
if I see somebody standing around with a parabolic dish pointed around at people, I'd probably be suspicious.
Yeah, some ray gun looking thing.
Like, are you from this planet or are you lost?
Like, no, I'm just
Oh,
stealing credit card information.
No, I've heard some stories of social engineering tied in with some very low tech, but knowledgeable tax. There was one guy I was listening to. He reached out to a video game manufacturer. He was talking to the person saying, "Hey, I'm thinking of interviewing. What's it like in that neighborhood? What's a good place to eat? What's your favorite place to eat?" Then, after he found out where she worked and found out where she went to lunch, he just kind of stalked a little bit, sat in the restaurant, scanned her badge, and then was able to walk into the company and sit down at her desk.
Oh, wow.
That's crazy.
You got to be cautious. Like, I can't stress that enough in this podcast. We have got to be vigilant and prepared and paranoid, but live life. Don't go into a Faraday cage buried under the ground. Live life. Get an RFID blocking wallet. Just basic stuff will keep you safe. Turn off Wi-Fi. Turn off Bluetooth so you don't use that on your phone.
Mm-hmm.
It's important.
Yeah, that reminds me. This is a long time ago. People were unlocking Teslas, using Bluetooth. So if I owned a Tesla and it was connected to my phone and I kept my Bluetooth on, they were getting in and unlocking, a Tesla with their own phone. So yeah, it's definitely something. If you don't need it at the time, shut it off. Leave it for later.
Yep. Well, speaking of experience, let's dive into that. One of the things that I've got in conversation with people is they want to know what we are, who we are, what our experience is, how did we get to now? So I thought it might be cool for us to talk about what our claim to fame is. What is the battlegrounds we walked? What accolades do we have? Now I'm not talking like diplomas. I'm talking about events or accomplishments. Let's start with the man behind the screen, Artie. What's your accomplishments?
My what?
What would you like people to know?
Is this like one of those Elon Musk emails?
No.
Give me 5 bullet points.
I mean, I hope not, because this might actually matter.
Oh. Go for it.
I've been thinking about this for a bit, and about the best thing that I can say is that I'm constantly curious. I'm always learning new things, even if I don't want to. I mean, School of Hard Knocks teaches you a lot.
Yep.
But yeah, you learn from your mistakes, and if you don't learn from your mistakes, then you might invoke Murphy's wrath a little bit too frequently, and you might enter into the Darwin Awards as a winner. So, yeah, for me, my accomplishments, I mean,
Your chance to brag. Lay it
yeah,
out.
you're asking somebody that doesn't like bragging to brag.
Mhm.
I didn't say be comfortable.
I think I'm the only one sitting in a very comfortable chair right now.
Probably.
I really don't know what to say on this.
No worries. No worries.
Well,
One
I'd
of the
say
things that go ahead.
for a while, Artie was our main author for our news site. You know, really great at doing
Yep.
research, really great at pulling together details. You know, necessary unbiased news. I mean, that was a huge thing. And I know recently you've been doing a lot with you know, firewall network security.
Kind of threw to the wolves on that one, didn't we, Artie?
Yeah, I kind of tamed those wolves.
Well, we'll brag on your behalf. You have an aptitude that is incredible. Within just a few months, you've learned what the TCP and UDP stack means, how to scan, detect, and block different threats in very short order. So I would say your main claim to fame is a tenacity and aptitude to understand even things you don't have a frame of reference for.
I try.
Yep. Well, let's move on to Jackson. Let's give you a soapbox to stand on. Do you know that reference?
Oh,
Soapbox to stand on?
oh yeah. Well enough. Well enough, at least. I've heard the saying. Is it from something very specific?
I don't know if it is
I
it
don't
a
know if
specific?
I don't think specific. It was just a thing that
It's
happened
a
back in the
cultural
day.
thing, yeah.
Yeah, because
Stand on
Stand
a
in town
soapbox.
square.
boxes of soap came in boxes, and was a very safe thing to step onto to raise yourself above the crowds around you.
Right.
Until it rained, and then you got suds everywhere.
Well, allow me to mount myself here on a little soapbox. But let's see. I'm still I'm young and new to the IT world, but I have had, I guess now, ooh, it's been many a years, I guess, since I've started working in tech. Um, currently getting my bachelor's degree in computer engineering at Brigham Young University. Considering getting a master's, that might be something I find interest in. But my kind of intro into the tech world started when I was in high school, which is really funny. And I think about it, when I was a freshman, I thought I wanted to do civil engineering. And then I moved schools, and the engineering program at the new school basically told me, yeah, you want to do the engineering program? Well, you're gonna have to go back and do a freshman year again so that you can actually get into the on track. And I was like, well, I just did it. Like, why would I do that again? So that was kind of discouraging. Couldn't get into the, you know, their engineering program. So I started branching out, looking at different things I wanted to do. And my school district had a wonderful local, or I guess central building that had entrepreneurship, some creative design, and of course tech classes. And so I was like, oh, sure, I'll take a couple. You know, I grew up playing video games. Tech always kind of interested me, and so made it there and got really interested in computer hardware. And from there, I worked at a computer repair shop for a couple of years. I've done repairs on hundreds of devices, from phones, tablets, computers, laptops, all sorts of things. You know, really digging into the insides. I love doing that. And then yeah, so I've been at school. You know, I've branched out. It started, instead of repairing, started to make some things. You know, playing a lot with microcontrollers. Currently working on like a little lightsaber project. I'm sure it's one that's been done hundreds of times, but doing a little prototype, make myself a little lightsaber for fun. But yeah, it's been a fun ride. I've learned a lot here at WoW Support, that's for sure. John and Mike are wonderful mentors. John, I don't remember. I don't know if you remember, but this was so funny. I was looking for a job, and you know, I had worked fast food in high school, and I was recommended John through a mutual friend, and I called him. I said, John, I was like, well, let's see, I've got, you know, 3 months here before I go off to school. And I was like, but you know, I'd love to work, and you know, just I'll do anything for you. He's like, if you got a closet to clean out, I'll clean out the closet. I was like, I just don't want to work fast food again. And it's funny. John's like, all right, well, I got a closet for you to clean out. And that's kind of how that started. And it was a lot of fun. I'm sure if they want to, they could tell you more about it.
Well, and we actually just had to reclean that room. We kind of forgot that carpet was in there. We found it, so it's right where you left it.
It's way better than it was for the last couple months, that's for sure.
Oh, it's good to get some of those projects in the rearview mirror. Well, Jackson, what was your GPA in high school? What'd you graduate with?
Oh, high school, it was a cumulative. It was a 4.6, I think.
Nice.
Yeah. So I've been trying
Nice.
to keep that up as much as I can. College, they don't do any of that cumulative crap, so that's just a good old sitting around
Yep.
at 3.95, I think, right now.
Keep up the good work.
Will do.
Glad to have you on staff.
Glad to be here.
Mike, I'm going to yank
Yes,
the
sir.
soapbox out from underneath Jackson and toss it your way.
Ouch. Anyway,
Can I get workers' comp for that?
yeah.
No. There's no proof.
It's
no evidence.
it's an accepted risk there, Jackson. So I have been writing computer programs since the age of 6. My mother actually was gifted a Commodore 64 the first year that they came out in 1982. And it was this new shiny thing that hooked up to the TV set. And I remember waking up on one Saturday morning and they had it set up and my parents were already playing with it, typing in like little programs. Because back then the instruction manual came with some tutorial on how to program in BASIC. It had embedded BASIC built into it. And so they were typing in programs and looking to see what it could do. And they had a floppy disk drive and had some programs on a disk that they could load up and play around with. And I just look at like, wow, this is fascinating. And I want to learn how to do this stuff. And so as I was, spending time at home and my mom was taking classes then, community classes on how to use the computer, I kind of just picked up what she was doing and I sort of self-taught myself. I mean, I knew how to read, so I picked up the books and I could read. I like, well, I can type that in. I can find the letters on the keyboard and type it all in. And I self-taught how to write little programs in BASIC. I actually, doing some research, I still have that Commodore 64 and I still have a lot of those disks. I was able to recover the very first program that I wrote and saved. It's total nonsense. It's just, you gotta think 6 years old, like it's whatever. But the fact that I've been able to keep that program around for 40 plus years, I think is truly amazing. So that started a real passion into programming. I kept learning, and as the years went by, I kept learning more and more about how to program the Commodore 64. And that got me interested in other computers as well. At school, like most people, Apple II was the lab computer of choice for a lot of people. And so, in addition to playing Oregon Trail and dying of dysentery umpteen number of times, we did also have programming classes. We learned Logo and also BASIC on the Apple II. And there were some opportunities to take some after-school advanced classes for those of us that really showed an aptitude for programming. I remember being in that with some of my friends. Get into high school, and it was nothing but computer science classes all through high school. Learned how to do Pascal. Attempted to take the AP computer science test. I did not pass, but a lot of the class didn't pass, and we felt that we were kind of ill-prepared because of a teaching situation that happened with our teacher, that he just was not able to focus the amount of time that we really needed to be prepared and study for that AP test. But it didn't stop me. We went on. We did a senior projects class by senior year, and then once I got into college, things kind of changed, and I was sitting in class and debugging the professor's computer program on the screen. Like, why isn't this working? Like, you forgot to put a semicolon here at the end of this line, and kind of things. And seeing in the computer lab later that day, and everybody's just having a hard time getting their programs to run because they had reconfigured the lab and just things weren't working right because they hadn't completely tested it. And I also worked as a janitor at Novell. And those of you who are older will remember what Novell was, but I was working as a janitor there, and I'd see people late at night just feverishly hacking away on some code or configuring some computers or something, on the phone with somebody in Asia or Europe or somewhere, trying to debug, help them out, debug something. And I just like, I don't know, because like these people are losing their jobs every 3 months, and then they're getting rehired, and they're here late at night, and I'm just like, is this really worth it? And so I took a sidetrack and got my associate's degree in computer graphic design, and with that I was able to become a lab assistant. I became adjunct faculty. I really grabbed onto that. I love doing graphics on the computer. It's just so much fun. And that got me into a job with a contracting company where I was initially hired to do their graphics work and maybe design a web page and take care of like logos and marketing and just some other services that they needed in that respect. But then that grew into that because I was the only guy that knew how to really run a computer. I was in charge of all the computers at the company, which means I was the chief IT officer for the company. And so I got to set up the website, set up all the email accounts, manage all the computers, the laptops in and out, the office network. We had lots of guys that were on field projects. They needed remote access. I had to figure that out, set that up. They'd have problems. I had to figure out how to do remote support over the phone to help them figure out why their computer was broken. And as I did that, I just naturally learned all the things I needed to learn about networking and how an email server works and how web pages work and all that. And so unfortunately, that business went bankrupt around COVID time, but I had already started back into college online, and I was able to get my bachelor's degree. I graduated summa cum laude with a bachelor's degree in applied technology with an emphasis and certificates in web programming, systems administration, and networking. And so that's kind of been the most recent thing. And then that brought me here to WIO Support, where I've been here for 3 years. So all in all, it's about 18 to 20 years of experience actually doing IT support with 40 plus years in computer programming and everything too. And I've just loved every minute. It's fascinating. Just, I think we take for granted what these computers are doing and the speed at which they are doing them. And so many people around me will say, well, it's so slow. It's not fast enough. It's like, yeah, but if you really stop and think for a minute what it's doing right now, it's moving way fast than I could ever think. So there you go.
Well, glad to have you on staff, Mike. I mean, it's been awesome watching you just tackle the problems. I've thrown you a couple curveballs.
Mm-hmm.
One of the curveballs I'll mention now. I think you got to turn off the kiosk. It's flickering and it's popping your camera a little bit.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, getting a little strobe effect going. But yeah, it's been phenomenal working with everybody here. So I'm going to yank out the soapbox. Mike, brace yourself. Jackson, hold on to the bar. Artie,
okay.
Don't hit the mute button.
Oh, here we go.
So, lots of people wondering my background. Why did I start WIO Support? Let's dive into history. Kind of like Mike, I started out with Texas Instruments TI 994A. So kind of the same vintage, kind of the same technology, but not Commodore. It was the other camp.
I had friends that had those.
Yep.
I do remember that.
It was a friendly rivalry between us. I mean,
Those
You know,
8-bit
mine's better.
wars.
I can do this. Yeah.
Those 8-bit wars. Those are the days.
Oh, and Commodore, I think, won because there was more users that adopted it. But TI had these little cartridges that you could put in the side and add features and functions. It even had a voice box.
I
Okay,
remember
a
that.
late 70s box could do voice. And for 2 decades after that, they couldn't figure out how to get computers to talk. It's like, okay, that works. Yeah, I learned how to program BASIC. Had a black and white TV, so I had to trust that it was color coming out the TI. That was fun. No monitors. You had to hook it up to a TV.
Our Commodore was the same way.
I mean, those were the days. Like, you had to really bang on it to make it work. And I learned so much by just cobbling together just tech here and there. Remember getting a 8088 computer growing up. So this thing had a 10 megabyte hard drive. Oh my goodness, that thing was huge. I'll never fill that up. Had a floppy disk. It was 5 1/4, dual sided, so I could actually do the 1.2 meg storage on that. So I was set. Learned all I could on that. Opened up the thing, played with stuff inside. Fortunately, got it back together and booted back up, so I didn't completely ruin my future. One of my favorite days was going to computer stores and just being excited and enthusiastic and meeting those older people that had the experience. They had the shop. They had the know-how, and they wanted to nurture and mentor. I found in a scrap heap 386 DX25, and the board was untested. The guy sold it to me for $10.
No way.
Okay, now this is in the age of the 48650. So we're talking like a $200 motherboard for $10. I then talked to the guys like, "Hey, can I have this?" Yeah, we got the deal. Now I need RAM. I bought 1 megabyte of RAM for $10. Going price at the time was $50. So I don't know who that guy's name is, but shout out to you. You set me on a great trajectory. So built up computers, got into that, got into video games. Oh my goodness, that was the hook that got me going. But yeah, so on and so forth. Now I'm into computers as a hobby. Kind of struggled through school because I've got a different way of learning. That was me. A bit of a learning disability. That's all I'm going to say about it. Computers really helped with that. Got into the tech lab. We had a vocational tech center for our district. I got into the tech lab there and thrived. Got to do videos. I saw the advent of sound in computers. Jackson, that might sound novel, but when I was playing with computers, they did not have sound.
Right.
So when Star Trek shows, "Hey computer, play me some Mozart," that was novel at the time. Not just the voice interact, but the fact that it could play music. Like, wow. Well, I watched that happen on our tech lab. So went through the tech lab. That was great. It's time to get into a professional career. So Gary, the owner of the company that helped put the tech lab in the school that I was at, he hired me. Offered me a job. Moved me to Colorado Springs for a year to help with some of the projects they had down there. That was super cool. First experience out of high school. I'm now teaching high school. I shouldn't be teaching high school. I should be helping teachers teach school, but the teachers walk in, dump the kids on me, and I have to teach them how to do whatever the program is that day. That was awesome. So here I am, 19, 20 something, in school teaching kids. Loved it. Had a choice: stay in school teaching or keep on a tech career. I wanted to stay on the tech career. I wanted to stay in the resale and the system configuration, build better systems, help more kids. Fast forward the clock a little bit, that company changed and went away, and I actually joined with the root company that made the tech lab, Creative Learning Systems. Again, I very rarely call out my history on this, but I worked for the original company that started my tech lab. I started in as a contractor I was number 7 on the staff when they hired me. They moved me from contractor to installer. That was cool. So I spent the next almost 20 years going from installer and just slowly moving my way up. I ended up being VP of operations after 20 years. Just working, just making it fantastic, adding to the team, building structures, building systems. During that time, I couldn't just sit on my hands. I had to actually go out and do the work. You know, when it's a small company of 7 people, you are doing the contract work. So just back of the napkin here, I've got this written down. Artie, you got a calculator handy? I got some numbers we got to figure out.
Okay.
So I tell people I've been in about 350 schools across the country. I helped install these tech labs. We would take an empty lab, we put the furniture, we put the computers, put the learning kits, and it was great. I had to set up a Windows network with a server and get it on the internet in every single lab. So if you figure 20 to 30 labs a year, sometimes it was 35, sometimes it was 40, sometimes it was lean. There's 5 periods a day for a school. Let's say average class size could be anywhere from 24 to 35 students. So let's go middle. Let's say 27. So 27 students times 5 periods a day. So that's the unique number of kids. Let's say that some of the kids take the class a second time. So we'll have 3/4 of unique attendance in the tech lab. So a fresh kid gets into that chair, uses that computer 3/4 instead of 4. And let's say the average life is 3 years on a tech lab. So 27, Artie, let's go back to the beginning. 27 students times 5 periods times 3/4 times 3 years. And again, I had like 20 years of installing these labs, 350 schools. So let's multiply that number times 350.
Okay.
What do we got?
106,312 and a half.
And a half?
How'd you get a half? It was all multiplication.
Because you said 3/4, which is 0.75.
Oh.
Oh,
All right, let's start that over. Let's start that. 27 times 5
Okay.
times 3 times 3. And then
Okay.
multiply that by 350 tech labs.
Okay. Then you get 425,250.
That's the number of unique students that worked in the tech labs that I personally set up and programmed.
Give or take.
So what does that number mean? That's not a number to really brag on. I don't like bragging too hard. Sometimes I do. But I had to build a system that would support that number of students and reduce the number of support calls that we had to get. At the beginning, I would install tech labs, and then through the rest of the year, I'm answering the phone for the things that break. The printers didn't work, passwords would need reset, that kind of thing. I had to build a system that was robust enough for schools, day in and day out, so I wouldn't have to answer the phone all the time. That was my goal. Now, we'd absolutely answer the phone when it rings, but I don't want that phone to ring. I want a system that just works. And by golly, we did it. So after I got off the road and moved into more of a leadership role in the company, we hired more teams, more people, more staff, and they continued the system forward. So I was able to keep that whole engine running, and I oversaw another 300 schools get installed. That was super cool, guys. I have worked with district administrators, I've worked with superintendents, I've worked with principals, I've gone up and down the whole length helping out with problems. I also did some side gigs on the thing, so I know the corporate world as well. So I started WIO Support because I wanted to keep the mission forwards. I want to keep education going. I want to solve the tech problems that the world has, and I know how to do it quickly and efficiently so that people can stay on task.
It's an impressive number, especially when you think about how all 400,000 of those people are touching and meddling and messing with those things. It's got to be robust. You got to have a lot of planning to go into that for it to hold up. So kudos to that.
And those are conservative numbers, guys. 3 years for a tech lab, some of them last 10. We did refreshes on those, so it's probably higher than that, but I don't want to brag too hard because, yeah. So that's kind of my history. I helped start the tech side, and then I moved into that run the company side. And I figured it's time to spread my wings and start this company and nurture, grow, teach, and support people and help them through problems. And hopefully build a system strong enough that we don't get all the support calls that are easy. Let's eliminate the calls that don't need to be calls by doing the work ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Well, that in a nutshell is us. Guys, I got to say, I'm proud to work with you. This has been an awesome, awesome time. I've been doing this for 4 years. Mike, you've been doing it for 3. Jackson, this is your 2nd year, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And Artie?
How
long have you been at this?
So this is the end of my first year full time, but I was doing the news for probably 1.5 years, 2 years before that.
Yep. So on this podcast right now, we represent well over 50 years of experience professionally. Kind of cool.
Yeah.
If you're not talking
I hope,
professionally, probably about 70.
Well, if any of the viewers have stuck with us this long, thank you. Appreciate your time. Love to see a like or a comment. Ask us questions. Interact with this video. Somehow let us know that this is something you want to see more of. We got a little technical at the beginning. We got a little personal at the end. Every podcast is going to be different, but also the same. So, anyway, until next time, I'm John.
I'm Mike.
I'm Jackson.
I'm Artie.
And we'll see you then.